Right, welcome back. Thanks for joining me for another little drawing adventure. Today we're going to do a bit of cartooning, and it's going to start out with very simple shapes, and we're going to build patterns on those shapes to create a very believable looking, kind of strange looking little bird. This is a drawing that I did in a different form a long time ago with my son and my family. We were traveling, and I had given both kids sketchbooks so that they could draw. When they started arguing with one another, it kind of broke them off into their own spaces. And my son came up to me and he drew a line that looked like this. I'm going to draw this line. This will be our first line in our drawing. It's going to come up and over like that, and down and sweep over this way just a little bit until it comes down here and then up. He did it very quickly. And I looked at it and I thought it looked kind of like an ear, kind of like some piece of lumpy fruit or something. And he said, well, what can you make out of it? So I took it and I added a little line coming down here further. And then I made an arc coming up and over like this. And I turned it around into a little smile-like shape at the end until it looked kind of like the beak of a bird. Then I added a line down here that came over and then up until it was right underneath that one, kind of like a large letter U. And I decided to make the bottom beak of this bird come down like this, and then up and over until it joined up in kind of a smile-like shape. Now I have a big open mouth here, so I figured I might as well have the bird's tongue sticking out like this and back like that. And I was thinking of a tropical bird, kind of like a toucan, a Fruit Loops bird, and decided to add the inside of the mouth coming over here like this. It's going to curve down and around and disappear behind the tongue and maybe even show up a little down here. We're kind of looking up at it, so we're looking into the bottom of the mouth here and at the bottom of the lower beak. I decided to add a line along here just to kind of make it look more full at the edge, at the lip. So I'm going to draw this line. It's going to get skinnier coming down there, and I'll put one here like this coming around just to add a different kind of a texture to it. And I decided to add a line that comes up here. So notice how it's higher here. It makes it look like it's a little further away from us, so it looks like the tongue is closer here and further away there. Then I added the inside line of that wider part of the beak, the stronger part of the beak here. And to make it look more like we're looking into that beak, I added curvy letter C-shaped lines like these that just kind of suggested the roundness, this roundness here coming this way, but I made it go in the opposite direction. So now it gives us the illusion of looking into the mouth of the bird, and I put these lines closer together as they got deeper back into the mouth to make that tongue really stand out more. I decided, since I had these, that the shape and all, I wanted to develop the tongue a little bit further. And this is the way our whole drawing is going to go. Like I mentioned, I'm going to start out with the simple shapes first and then just build patterns up on top of them. And all of the patterns are going to increase the illusion of roundness or three-dimension. I'm going to start out with some little pattern lines that come up here and make them kind of wavy looking just to make them more interesting, like camouflage. It would help this bird blend into the lush foliage of the tropics. It's a great kind of a drawing to do on a cold winter's day when you want to warm up a bit. Or in this case, it's springtime, and kind of inspired on these lines just by the patterns on the flowers that are everywhere around us today or these days. Notice I curved these lines over towards the left here, and I'm kind of fanning them around to the right to add to that roundness. And I'm going to just bring them back here. And now the space between each one of these lines can be a different color. You can make this look like a rainbow bird of some kind, or just use variations of oranges or yellows or whatever you choose. And that's the fun part about coloring. It's your imagination that guides you. I'm going to draw a line here coming over and some lines in here. Now these are shadow lines, just like the curvy letter C lines above, just to make it look like the tongue is coming out from this darker area in the mouth. To create the head of this bird, I think I'll just draw a circle shape, but instead of just drawing a circle, I'm going to come around here with a bunch of lines that suggest the circle, but they also make it look a little more like the downy feathers that you would find on the cheek of a bird. And if I just cut back in here a little bit with lines like this, it makes it look a little more feathery. So it looks kind of like a kiwi there. I'm going to add a line now that curves up and over, and this will be one of the eyes of the bird. And big eyeball. And I'm going to put a circle within that circle, but I'm going to elongate it a little bit to make it look like as though the bird is looking ahead or looking off towards the left. And I'll put a pupil right in here like this. Fun thing about drawing fantasy creatures, birds and such, is that you can draw them any way you want. By now, everybody's drawing should look very different. If you're drawing with a group of people, you'll find that your neighbors have a whole different arrangement of these lines, and that's the fun of creating. We all have our different take on things, our different way of doing things. I'm going to add some downy-looking eyebrows here, just to give it a more cartoon-like look. Looks kind of excited, kind of wild-eyed. And if I darken in the pupil here and leave just a little speck of light there, that speck of light says somebody's home. There's life inside those eyes. The head of the bird, I don't have a whole lot of room up above here on my paper, so I'm just going to do the same kind of a downy treatment here. And I'm just going to add these lines coming back around, and I'll draw them kind of quicker than the other ones. I'm just going to come around like that. So I have more downy feathers, and to make them look more interesting, I'm going to add some curvy lines here and just sort of overlap them. So again, each one of these lines we're drawing gives a suggestion for a different way of coloring, a different way of filling in the colors on this bird. And I'll do some similar lines around here. Notice I'm following the pattern of the bird. I'll add a few down in here, and I'm going to leave it light up here in front and to add to the illusion of roundness. I'm going to put a belly on this bird now, and it's going to start right down here, and I can use the same kind of curvy lines. Notice the belly of the bird is shorter or smaller even than the head. That's more cartoon-like, I think. And I'll add some lines kind of curving out in here. You can get creative with these little marks and put them in however you like. I'm just sort of making it up as I go. There's a wing that's flying up here. I have some room on the page, just enough to fit a wing in here like this. I'm going to take it up here. I'm going to take it all the way over to the edge as far as I can, and I'm going to bring it down like this. It'll come down, and it'll come right down here and disappear along the back of the bird there. And the feathers are going to follow this line, and they're going to radiate out, kind of fanning out like this until they join up with the body here of the bird. Kind of a tiny little wing for a big bird. I'm going to put small feathers up here with little U shapes. Maybe by now you've got some colors in mind. Hopefully some very, very colorful colors. I'm adding the barb down the center of the, or the quill down the center of the feathers. And then, if you want, you can go even further and divide this up into the individual quills or the barbs that make up the pattern on the wing. So each time we add a texture like this, you'll see that the darkness of the texture we're creating makes the lighter areas around stand out. And if I put lighter lines up above, it's almost as though they're either a different color or maybe they're catching some of the sunlight that we can suggest in our picture even better when we add color to it. In the belly here, I'm going to add a little line like this, and maybe in this area I'll just add a pattern of blotchy little marks here. Maybe it has a polka dot belly, and you can suggest this just with broken lines. Look at the variety of textures we have in here already. We're just kind of making this up as we go, and everybody's doing it their own way, and hopefully if you're having trouble keeping up with me, because I know I'm clipping along pretty quickly, you might want to add, pause a little bit and come back to it. And maybe you want to add some little lines coming out of these shapes. That's up to you. I'm just going to add a few little marks and think of rays. Maybe it's darker in the center of these circle shapes and lighter on the edges. Maybe it blends into a different color along the body. I want to add some other feathers back in here, just some little curvy lines to kind of soften up the spikes along the edge. And then right down here, I'm going to add a curve here. And another one right here is going to come down and around like this. And we're going to draw the claws of the bird. And we'll draw these coming up and around. And this one here up and around like that. And this one. And on the other side, I'll have one facing out in the other direction. See how this letter C curves out to the left where these curved out to the right? I'm not sure what he's holding on to, but I'm sure he'll have something in his grip. I'm going to draw one here. Now, these are all close together, and they separate down at the bottom of the claws there. This one here I'm going to make more separate like that. And this one here, maybe I'll keep close like that. So a little bit different. You might be carrying something, a gift for somebody. Maybe it's nesting time, and this little guy's bringing a present for his wife or his mate. Draw a line that comes down here now, and we've got this wing here on this side. We're going to draw a little bit of the wing coming out on this side to the right, or to the left, here on the right. And I'm just going to curve it down like that, and then we'll have some feathers like these coming up, and we'll just kind of fill this space in here and see a little bit of him. So he's flying in kind of a excited, erratic looking way. I'll put a few of these little bumps over here, and then divide these feathers up with lines like this. There's your quills, quill in the center and the barbs here, and lighter on top, and maybe do the same thing here, a little different angle. And down in here, I'm going to darken them in a bit, and you'll see why when I get over close to the belly and the beak. See how we darken this up? It makes the belly stand out more, it makes the beak stand out. These claws can have a pattern too. They might have a banding up and over on this, coming around, and maybe the claw itself at the bottom of the feet. So you see, once again, starting with larger shapes and adding ever finer, smaller shapes to make it look more interesting, more believable, actually. So now we got this little bird. I'm going to draw a few little feathers kind of flying away from like this, from him along the head there like that, to show he's excited and in a hurry. And maybe a couple over here like this. It adds a little sense of wind in the air, some urgency. And then I think what I'll do is I'll figure out what I'm going to put in this claw here, in his claws. I want to do that before I draw the tail of the bird, because this will be in front of it. So I think I'll draw a line that comes down here. I'll draw a broken line because I'm not sure what this is going to be. And I'll have a little piece coming down here, and I'll have another piece coming up there like that. And then I'll carry this line. See how it wiggles along the bottom? It's going to come up here, and I think I'll wiggle it right up here past the jaw of the bird over there like that. So he's got this branch. Now maybe he's sitting on a branch. Maybe he's just up there and he's just kind of sitting on it. Maybe he's flying along carrying this, like we mentioned earlier, like I mentioned. So I'm going to use these open spaces as a way to suggest lines coming out, and from these lines we can have like a broken end of a stick here, perhaps. And out here, maybe we could draw some kind of tropical flower. Yeah, that's what we'll do. We'll draw a tropical flower right here. I'll start with a little base there, and then we can draw petals that come up like this on both sides. Make these petals kind of skinny on the sides because we're seeing them from the edge. And then as you come up closer in the center, you can just go back and forth and make these look larger here, like that. And just kind of overlap them and bring it in here until you have this. And then each of these could have a little line showing that it's a little darker at the base. Maybe it's in the shadow. And down here, you can add some kind of a tropical texture if you want, just crisscross lines. And over here, I'll add another line out like that. And I think what I'll do is I'll bring this line. It's going to get really skinny up here as it's further away. And I'll bring one that comes over here and around. Again, I'm making this up as I go, so I'm not sure what's going to happen. I just know I have space here, and it looks like it'd be a fun place to add something to it. So I'm going to add another one of those little pods there, and I'll have another blossom coming down this way. And notice how I draw a curve there. It's like the wind is catching this and blowing it off into the distance. I add this line here coming down. We're seeing it from a different angle here. When I widen this out and curve it around, and so it looks almost like a hand, like a glove or fingers reaching around. Now, from this one here, this one is coming down and turning kind of down and away from us and tucking back. I'll curve this line around, and then I can put some little crisscross lines in there. And again, we have the opportunity to add some shadow, some texture to it by bringing little lines like these. Now, maybe these blossoms have a calyx, a center that has little lines like this flying about, and that'll add to the motion of the bird as it's moving through the air. And these lines here will trail down behind like this. Just simple lines with little dangly things on the end there, like that. This branch gives us an opportunity to add some more texture to it, and it'll be nice because here on this bird, I can show how the belly of the bird is kind of enlarged on it, or darkens it, or shadows it here. I'm going to draw some curved lines like these that come along, and just show the roundness of that branch, and leave a little bit of light along the bottom edge. And along in here, I'm going to leave some light along the top edge, and I'll turn this away by drawing letter C's facing in the opposite direction. This one here I'll have coming towards me like this. So you see how we put dark against light to make the light stand out? If you want, you can come back in here and add a little speckling of dots or marks. So here what we're doing is we're stippling. We're adding some darkness in the center of these areas. Maybe that'll be perhaps a red or an orange color going out into yellow, and then you could have pale blues or greens around the belly of the bird. But just simple little marks like this. Again, the fun thing is you can make it up as you go. And the other fun thing is your drawing is going to be way different from mine. This is different from any bird like this I've ever drawn. So it's always an adventure, a chance to explore and experiment and learn things. And the other thing is you get to make some mistakes or have accidents, and those also help because they teach us better ways of doing things just by experimenting and exploring. I want to add a little texture down here, and I'm going to put this on every other one of these patterns here, just to suggest that this stripe is darker than the ones next to it. And notice that puts a shadow along the bottom, and along here I'll do the same thing. I'll add dark stripe there, lighter stripe here, and then a dark one. And then notice that the lines I'm drawing are kind of copying the curves of the major shapes that I'm shading in. So I'll just go back and forth with those until it comes along and ends up looking pretty realistic. If you have little spaces like this, if you drew like I did, I often leave broken lines like that. It gives me a chance to add more if I want, or I just fill it in if I don't want, and it gives me a chance to make it look a little bit more real. Now, I mentioned the tail of the bird. I'm going to bring the tail of this bird coming down here. His back is going to be behind that part of his body, and the tail is going to come out here, and I'll bring it down, and I'll bring it behind the branch like that, and I'll bring it up like this, coming back and up and over. It's nice we have all this in front. We don't have to spend a lot of time drawing these tail feathers, but we know where they are because that's where they belong. I'm just going to draw. Now notice I got these smaller and smaller as I turned around here so that we see it more from a three-dimensional angle. On the bottom of these feathers, I think I'll just draw a scribbly pattern like this to show that it might have a bright blotch of red at the bottom, or orange, something really tropical. Been to a few tropical places where we've seen birds of all different feathers, all different colors. And this is a great place to experiment and show it off. I think, boy, I'm just about out of room here. I think what I'll do on this drawing is come down below, and I'm going to sign my drawing. I'd like you to sign your drawing as well. And to remember when you did this, I'd like you to add the date. Now, the date I'm adding is the date we filmed this, so it'll be different from yours. But it's always nice to have a record of when you did something, especially if you're going to do more of them. And that way you can see how your drawing improves or how your imagination grows and changes into different ways of doing similar things. This is just one of thousands of different kinds of birds you could draw using simple shapes like bananas and kiwis and blueberries and lemons and big fuzzy cat toy balls or whatever you want to call them. They're just simple lines and shapes. And then we have fun adding texture to it. If you want to make him look like he's up in the air, you can have a hint of background here. I'm going to draw a cloud billowing up like this. See, I can just keep going. I thought I was done. Now I'm adding clouds. Down below here, you could add some tropical palm trees, really small, like they're far away, and he's flying up in the air above them. And I'll put some of those in here just to show that this is a tropical world. And just add a few of those. Here's another one up here, even above my name. I'm just going to bring it down like that and just suggest that this guy is on a mission. He's on his way back to the nest, and he's got this big branch with flowers on it, and it's going to really decorate their nest. I'm going to add the date here, like I mentioned a while ago. It is June 6th, and it's the 17th. I'll call it the 17th and 20. I definitely would like to have the date on there, just so I can remember. I'm going to draw more of these, I'm sure, so I'm going to be able to see how my ideas change over time. I want to thank you very much for drawing with me. I hope you had a great time with this. Have fun with the colors. This is perfect for colors, so hope to see you again. Thank you soon.